Hello, and welcome to this introduction to leadership principles and purpose. You might ask, why start with principles? And to get the answer, we can turn to the philosopher John Rawls, who developed a thought experiment called the veil of ignorance. This asks you to imagine you're dropped into a society and you don't know your age, your gender, your qualifications or status in that society. So the question is, what rules, what principles would you like to see established? This very quickly leads us into higher order principles and the standards that we expect to see operating, which also will shape the culture. So higher order principles include concepts around equality, accountability, and transparency. In big organizations, these are then translated into operational principles. So, for example, Toyota talks about acting for others, working with integrity, and observing thoroughly. There's a Japanese expression which means go and see. So we avoid assumptions. There are new expectations which impact on leadership. So most organizations are now aware of issues relating to equality, diversity, inclusion, environmental, social governance, and this is all part of a broader remit around third-generation corporate governance. So if we look at Unilever, for example, they've stated that all their suppliers and subcontractors must pay a living wage by 2030, and this is aligned with the UN 2030 developmental goals. New legislation in the UK, referred to as the Hillsborough Law, will enforce greater transparency and candour in public sector organisations. So part one of the book is all about gaining insight. Important themes include how we move to effective action. So we talk about why leaders need to display conviction, clarity, consistency, how they develop motivation in others, and how they encourage active participation, not passive followers. Future-focused leaders translate vision through principles into effective action. They create enabling conditions, and they build on feedback. And we might ask, what happens when leaders neglect these superordinate principles? Well, for an answer, just look at recent events. So, for example, Dieselgate or the post office scandal in the UK. Ideas and insights explored in the book include the belief that people are hardwired for principles, purpose and progress. There's a lot of research to support this argument, and various items are listed in the book. Leaders, however, do need to shape the context. They need to ask questions around why, what and how, and they ensure clarity. They create a sense of direction and improve the resources which people have available. Effective leaders also develop learning agility, so they're better able to respond to complexity and challenging situations. They develop authenticity. In the book, we identify 4 steps which are particularly important, and they also adopt a style which is autonomy supportive. They give people the opportunity to exercise discretion and use initiative. So the book aims to offer a fresh perspective. Part 1 focuses on how leaders can improve effectiveness, particularly in terms of resolving problems, enhancing work relationships, and delivering results. Future-focused leaders also appreciate that people have 3 core needs. This is drawing on self-determination theory, and these needs relate to a desire for trust-based relationships, a wish to develop personal competence, and the need to have a degree of self-direction and autonomy. Practical techniques are highlighted. These include the use of purposeful conversations, how we can improve balanced processing of information, and also the hippo coaching model, which is particularly useful when people face challenging or demanding activities, problems. Now, part 2 of the book moves towards taking action. So important elements include helping people increase their understanding of their work preferences, how they are directing their energy. And this is linked to the Pario online questionnaire. So you do have the option of completing that and getting an in-depth report. We also clarified the difference between competency, skills and knowledge needed to do a task, and competencies, the approach and behaviour that differentiate superior performance. And competencies can be clustered. We refer to the 3H model. This links to the head, the heart and the hands. In other words, how we go about analysing problems, how we interact with other people and develop capability, and then the follow-through and the delivery. The book discusses how leaders enhance motivation, so we move from discretionary effort through to performance and required standards, and then what we mean by outcomes and the value that we can build. One of the key questions is, who am I being as a leader? And this also links to, have I developed an internalized script so that I can link the role requirements to the competencies and have a sense of authenticity in how I'm approaching particular activities. So future-focused leaders create enabling conditions, they strengthen motivation, and they encourage the commitment required to deliver exceptional outcomes. So more specifically in part 2, we focus on 10 development modules, and this is a brief overview. So if we look at module 6, working with people, we can see this links to setting direction and how we work with others. And the work preferences questionnaire identifies a number of dimensions, including establishing direction. And completing that questionnaire will then generate a score on a 1 to 10 point scale. And we can see the typical response range of experienced professionals and team leaders. So looking more closely at Module 6, establishing direction is also supported by a case study we've included in part 2 of the book, and this provides a point of reference. So the preference score is followed by a brief description. This is generated by the computer, which links to this preference score on establishing direction. Obviously, if you complete the questionnaire, then you can review your own emphasis and how that compares. So the preference score contributes to an overall pattern of response. And I would emphasize these dimensions are not personality traits. They reflect how you are responding to role requirements and the preferences that you've established. So the pattern of response is viewed in the context of role demands. It's about how you're directing energy and attention. And the scores are recorded in a chart so that you can see immediately where there are peaks and where there are dips. So the preference scores reflect choices. They reveal how energy is being directed. And typically team leaders and people in leadership roles will tend to place more emphasis on some areas than others. Now, the insights can be linked to follow-up action. So, for example, in terms of practical activity, this example links to purposeful conversations and the AIMS model. So this can be put into an operational context. Moving forward, we come back to this question, who am I being as a leader? And we might ask, when we're faced with a challenging problem and there's no easy solution, how do we respond? Or when the team experience setbacks and lose motivation and resilience, or when the department struggles to achieve the outcomes we're seeking. So the questions are designed to prompt reflection. They also link back to the 3H competency model, and we do identify key leadership competencies in the book, so they provide a point of reference. So the course encourages you to get greater insight and reflect on this question: how does my approach affect outcomes? The book includes access to practical resources. So I've mentioned the work preference questionnaire, but it's also possible to use the Perio 360-degree feedback questionnaire as a follow-up, maybe 3 months after completing the development course. And this helps reinforce learning and consolidates the overall process. There's also the Perio type indicator, which relates to balanced processing of information and explores the sensing, intuition, feeling, thinking sequence. And the resources can be linked to action learning within organizations. And if required, we can support any initial in-house training and development work. Now, you can preview the book on the Routledge website, www.routledge.com, and just search for Leadership Principles and Purpose. We also have a website, Perio360.com, and you can make contact via the website.